So can everybody hear me? Uh, this will be quite quick, kind of quick, because this is basically a byproduct by my normal research that I'm focusing on Turing and von Neumann. And as I started reading the original work and the text, and I'll be doing it for last 8 years or so, I noticed some differences, and I try to connect it to mostly culture, pop culture, and things like this. So unfortunately for you, I'm not sure I'll be using words semio something anytime soon, probably not, no, never. And before we start, just one thing. I know that artificial intelligence and artificial life are two different fields. I'm aware of it. But for the purpose of this presentation, and just because people usually talk about it in kind of similar way, it's the same thing. So when I'm talking about AI, I'll also mean A life and vice versa, okay? So before we start with the presentation itself, there are two the first one is very known. It's a quote by Alan Turing from his famous paper, Computing Machine Intelligence from 50s. And we will talk about this paper kind of a lot later, but it basically says that instead of trying to produce a program to simulate the adult mind, why not try to produce one which simulates the child's? Now, if you are familiar a little bit with the machine learning and neural networks and all stuff around it, it's way more complicated than just saying this, that we can train something like child's mind and model it for our purpose. That it's much more complicated. But what's Turing doing here is that he's putting humans, us, in the middle of a problem of something artificial, right? This is the first silver line. And he's using words like child's mind because it evokes some feelings, an adult's mind because it evokes something else. And it was actually because he needed to put this idea across to the public too. And it certainly put us into the middle of the problem of artificial intelligence. The second quote is probably not so known, but for progress there is no cure. Any attempt to find automatically safe channels for the present explosive priority of progress must lead to frustration. The only safety possible is relative, and it lies in an intelligent exercise of day-to-day judgment. This is by John von Neumann, from essay called "Can We Survive Technology?" from 55. And actually, this essay is kind of important because it reflects not only the technology at the time, but also the fear of nuclear war because we are in the middle of Cold War. And he's probably one of the guys that should be answering this question because he was there when they did the whole nuclear thing. And he also talked about the change of climate and things like this. But this shows us that we can help just to go with the development of technology. And our main weapon for it is a common sense. And I think that lately we've been kind of losing it when it comes to the more modern technologies like chatbots and things like this. So this is the second silver line I'm trying to do through the presentation. I'm going to start here because actually the first question, when is the beginning of AI and AI, is something I usually ask my students in some courses because the answer is actually not that simple. We can talk about the official definition in the 60s. We can talk about Turing during doing his work in 30s and the main program starting in 40s. Usually, basically after the Second World War with von Neumann, Morse code, not only just the ENIAC and computers, but also DEPs. But when it comes to the idea of AI and AI, it's much more longer with us. It's basically with us since the beginning of the dawn. And it's the place where we get our narrative about it. Because we could start with Galatea and Pygmalion. Pygmalion was sculpture, Galatea was his art piece, and he fell in love with it. You can know the name from Ovidius, from Metamorphosis too. There's different story about it. You probably know about Golem, especially Czech people are really fond of this story. The most famous one is from the 20th century, but there are many other ones. And basically, Golem was built to flex rabbis to make them look better than other homunculus in Faust and other places. But also, what's the main point in this presentation is Frankenstein, because it might be a bit cliche, right? Because we are now talking about AI and AI. But when we say Frankenstein, people probably gonna visualize the monster. Sometimes green ones, sometimes it looks like Adam's family with screws in the neck. You're not gonna picture Victor Frankenstein, the actual Frankenstein, right? You're gonna picture the creature he made. The same with Anywhere, the play by Chapek. You're not gonna visualize the people who did the robots, but you're gonna think about the robots and the word robot that came from it. And these two actually kind of made, at least for me, the main narrative we have now, because both of the stories, Frankenstein and Anywhere, are meant to be scary to us, right? They warn you. Chapek warn you mostly against war and weapons, but also technology that's gonna go wild. Frankenstein warn you about the missing parents and how the creature turns into the monster, just not because it was made, but by the action of the maker. And we are losing this. We are losing the connection to the creators of these things. We are seeing the products. Because if you think about it, do you know who made Alexa? Not just the Bezos that he paid for it, but the actual guys behind it, or the guys behind Siri, or behind Google Assistant. No, there is us, then a huge nothing with all the feelings we have about AI and AI life. And there is the product. And we, because of many, many things, try to connect with it. And my main question is why we're doing it and why we actually try to do something that's not exactly, not only good for us, but doesn't make sense. And the reason why, at least for me, we are losing the creators, we are losing the connection to the creators, to the middle chain, is because we are fascinated by the act of creation. If you ever saw anything that's inspired by Frankenstein, and I'm not talking the movie about with Emma Stone because I haven't seen it yet, so I'm not sure exactly. But the very famous one from 1931, this quote never appeared in the Frankenstein the story. It's alive in the name of God. Now I know what it feels like to be a god. And when you think about the creation of Frankenstein, usually it paints some kind of picture. It's dark with the lightnings, and the monster is big and scary, and you see the crazy creator with the hair all over. It's a very powerful picture. And we are focusing on the act of doing something and what it does. We are kind of losing the one who did it. And it's because the fascination with God and the creating artificial life and intelligence, it's ongoing. Even Turing had to answer his question. We're going to see his answer. But it's something we focused more on than the actual stuff. What did it look like in the actual story of Mary Shelley in 1880 version is the bolted part. But now that I had finished, the beauty of the dream vanished, and Brettel's horror and disgust filled my heart. This is like one or two paragraphs after the monster opened its eyes. There is nothing about God. There is nothing about creation, but there are about the feelings of creator that we can get because we kind of lost the touch. The Mother's Creatures was the name of the previous slide, as you probably noticed. It's taken from a book, the same name, and it's actually written about all of these things about Golem and Homunculus and Frankenstein. Actually, if you notice, when we have the act of creation, the mother is missing. So we basically took creature that has only father and usually a really bad father, and that's the reason why they ended up how they ended up, and we're gonna make them lose the father too. So basically now they are orphans, and we are putting ourselves in the role of the parents. Basically, we have this kind of weird relationship with it at some point. Even Turing, that he's known for uncomputable numbers and doing the Gödel's problem and for the paper from 50. But 2 years prior, he published Intelligent Machinery. That's a little bit wild because he could do it. He could take all his thoughts about artificial life, artificial intelligence, and put them in one place, even though they were a bit crazy. Now here you can see he actually thought about making artificial intelligence the way that he's gonna take a man as a whole and try to replace all the part of him by machinery. Cameras, microphones, loudspeaker, electronic brain. In the 50s, the combination of electronic brain was kind of attractive, not only to scientists, but also to public. There were many protests against computers itself, but also the probably machinery. But also on the other side, the scientists, the whole cybernetic field, they were actually excited about the idea of building electronic brain. So Turing is already pointing at the places that are interesting to us and then make us interested in this topic and to take place, to take arguments, to be passionate about it. Because if we are talking about AI, usually there are gonna be emotions, good one, bad one, and we are still putting ourselves in the middle of the problem. You should be a little bit afraid of Alan Turing, because even though that I really appreciate him, I read tons of things about him, and I think he was one of the greatest men. AI technology officially is from the 60s. In reality, he started working on it around 40s. And in 50s, he even doubled in biology a little bit and chemistry. So he worked on AI life and DNA. But his paper, Computing Machinery and Intelligence, it's lots of different. If you're familiar with his work, he writes like a madman, and you need basically a translator for his every sentence. But computing machinery is available to you. It talks to you kind of normally. It presents the idea of artificial brain, artificial machines, something thinking, something interesting. And it also presents the idea of imitation game. Now, Turing test is passé. We already decided, even Marvin Minsky, before he died, he was like, Turing test is nonsense, the imitation game. But it's excellent propaganda. Because if you know the imitation game, it's you sitting somewhere and you have two like little boxes in front of you. And then one is human, another is computer, you are asking the questions. And you are waiting for the answers. So you are already including yourself in the whole problem of artificial intelligence. So that means that you are bringing in all the good and all the bad parts of human being. And Turing, starting his paper with asking, what is artificial intelligence, and saying things like that we have to define intelligence and we have to define artificial and things like this, quite quickly changed to this. This is a quote from the same part of the paper, but in the end, that the reader must accept that as a fact, the digital computers can be constructed and indeed have been constructed according to the principles we have described, and that they can in fact mimic the action of human computer very closely. You have to accept that the computers are here with us. There is now other options for you. Imagine you are in the 50s. You are glad that you survived the wartime, and suddenly someone is telling you have to accept something new. And he's putting just the facts, and you have to accept it. What's Turing smart for is using the word mimic, if you can see it here. Because usually when we talk about artificial intelligence and artificial life, it's like human. We are putting it next to us ourselves. But Turing, von Neumann, and other scientists at the time were very careful putting the words, because mimic, it's not being like something, it's mimicking its behavior. It's mimicking the way how it looks, talk, things like this. It's not the same thing. And they knew it. But because, general public not gonna pay attention to it, they're gonna pay attention to something else. This is kind of interesting because now we are interpreting Turing's work differently. We are losing the connection to these little things like the mimicking something, and there are many other examples of it if you're gonna read the whole paper. What he basically did with this was opening the door for AI, because computer brain, this powerful idea, is the same thing that today you're gonna say like singularity or general relativity or string theory. It's nice word. You're gonna see him to be amongst the smart ones, and it's attractive word. The same thing was the computer brain, because we know it's nonsense to build brain this way. Even for Neumann, who wrote a whole book about it, the computer and the brain, he wasn't trying to build the electronics brain, but he tried to use the computers how to describe the brain. But it was something so powerful that it made many scientists put a halt to their work and working on this. And also with the whole imitation game, as I was already talking about it, he put humans in the center of the design, because you are bringing your ideas, your biases, your psychology, character. All of this is part of the Turing test. If you read the paper, one of the first part is Turing is asking if the robot or the computer can write a poem, a sonnet, I think it's 18th Shakespeare, or if he can write a song. Because that's for us, that's our bias, that we need something like this to happen. The art, because it's art thing. So most of the people wouldn't pass the Turing test themselves. So it's like it's built very wrongly, but on the purpose to make you part of the problem, to make you build a connection, the feelings about it, right? And he's changing the original question, can machines think, and definition of machines and thinking, to saying that it's basically meaningless. He's pulling it off the table. That nevertheless, in the future, we're going to talk about it differently and without expecting to be contradicted. It's going to be smart and things like this. He's basically telling you that it's a fact. And something is fact, so nothing is going to change about it. So he's putting you in this role. And since then, we are kind of developing very weird relationship with it. And the most important thing at the time, or at least for rest of the Europe, not so much for our little godless country in the heart of it, was the question of God. Because the same with the Frankenstein, you have men playing God, pulling something together. At least what we thought about, what we think about this story. And this same was with Turing. They asked him about it multiple times. And the first quote is from the beginning of this part of the paper, as he's presenting the problem that even animals and machines don't have the soul, so they can think this is something for human. And in the end, answering kind of similar to some quote that inspired me to do this kind of like thinking. In attempting to construct such a machine, we should not be irrelevantly usurping his power of creating souls any more than we are in the procreation of children. Rather, we are, in either case, instrument of his will, providing mentions for the souls that he creates. We are talking about kids, our children, our legacy. And we are talking about machines in the same paragraph, even in the same sentence. The children are basically artificial machines we are building for him to put the soul in it. So we are again connecting the human being, the human procreation and things like this together and making it our problem, making it us responsible for its behaving and things like this. This is the reason why so many movies like 2001 Odyssey and things like this are putting the AI in the horrible portrait, behaving very badly, even in modern age Ultron and things like this. And us making feel guilty because we are actually responsible for it. And this was the whole inspiration behind it. Because, PhD student, we have nothing better to do than at 2 a.m. browse Wikipedia and YouTube. And there is a great documentary from 80s, so I blame it on the 80s. Call it dream, the machine's dreams. And this is a quote of Marvin Minsky, and I couldn't find it written anywhere, so I had to listen to it on repeat to write it down. But he basically saying that our machine's descendants are just as much as our products, as our children, and perhaps more. Because you see, your children are not your creation. Your children are the children of that dinosaurs, not of you in the genetic sense. You are only the medium, but the robots are really your children if you help to make them, and you should feel closer to them than to other animals because you are responsible for them. For most of the part, for me, the first time around it was funny to think about dinosaurs as my parents. But if you think about the last sentence, he's doing it again. He's doing the same thing Turing did. He's putting you in the middle of problem. I know that there is a sentence, part of the sentence that if you help making them, but you are helping by researching on Google, by working with Chat GPT, by doing anything online. You are feeding current little robots, artificial intelligence. You are making them, so you are responsible for them. He's putting you in this role. Kind of the whole thing, I blame it on the 80s because 80s were weird, even 90s too. So it doesn't have to make all sense, but it shows our relationship to the AI to this part. And it continues with others, with Eliza, Siri, Alexa, and the others. Eliza was programmed in the 60s, you probably know it, by Weizenbaum. And Andrew Leonard said about it, it's the bot Erectus, the first software program to impersonate a human being successfully. Because Eliza was cheating program, actually psychiatrist, and I'm not sure because I don't have an iPhone, but if you ask Siri about Eliza, she should be saying something like that, she's my good friend, she's a very good psychiatrist. It was basically a good joke, but it has so much power because it gave the illusion of intelligence. Also, it gave the illusion of spontaneity because it was actually answering your question by taking the topic and repeating it, asking following questions. So you were actually indulging in the conversation, not as much as now with ChatGPT, but it was something in the 60s. And it continued. They are not advertising Siri, Alexa, Google Assistant as a friends. No, there's nothing about it. They are not trying to tell they are human, but just the instruction. Talk to Siri like you would to a person, your Apple. And you are building the connection, you are building a relationship with it. And it's something kind of crazy because here you can see that the algorithm is still the same. What is because your Siri will look the same as someone else's for algorithm, but you are putting in your personality, your research on Google or anything. You are building based on you. So from any chatbots, they started like Eliza or even for any companies, they'll also change to helpers. Now you have Siri, Alexa, and Google Assistant as the smart home, but you also have something like Replica and other applications for mobile to basically mimic your psychology or therapist by asking questions. They are combining Siri and Alexa in the smart home technology with the illusion of empathy because they are basically doing the same thing as Eliza asking you following question. And not only that, they learn how to make basically prompts for you because Alexa and Siri want to work with you until you ask them to work with you. Replica, it will pop up on the screen asking is everything okay? Or doing even something like I'm so grateful for you and the days we have ahead. And you are building again the relationship with something not so quite human that can give you the relationship back, but it makes you feel like there is something. And we are moving from the parenting role to something even weirder because suddenly there's feelings about it. You probably heard about the horror stories about someone doing horrible things just because ChatGPT told them or some other application told them and falling in love with some chatbots and things like this. And actually, it's because of this. The main message of Frankenstein, even though that you might not think about it this way, is that there is no life without love. Frankenstein was a creature. And at the time of Mary Shelley, actually, monster, the word monster, was used for other species. And later, during that time, right later, it started using it for human doing horrible things too. But he was just a simple creature, and he needed father, and the father was horrible, and the village was not there for the creature. So without the love, he became the monster and did horrible things. The quote next under it is from poet. So unrequited love is a nice way of saying you are expecting something that's not being offered. It isn't fair. You have to stop. Of course, because Richard Sicken is poet, he means love, love. But we could apply this to basically any relationship we have, any connection we have, and you are putting your energy, your feelings to these application, these chatbots, even though that you are like, I'm completely aware that I'm doing it, I'm completely above it, you are still doing it, you are still building the relationship. That's one-sided. It's not requited. It's still just you. So if you're gonna take this seriously, it's not fair to you, mostly because there's nothing for you. So why we do it? We kind of make ourselves believe in an illusion of any kind of relationship between us and AI and AI life. And it's because of all the movies you have, the movies her or she, something like this, that he's building his love life around cyborg. You have Alan Turing, who is the propaganda he did. You have many other scientists and pop culture telling you that the intelligence, the artificial intelligence is there for you. The many sci-fi books for the new Pauline and things like this. They are making it human-like. They are showing you that you can have the relationship in the pop culture and the culture way. But when you look into real life, they are still doing it, but there's nothing for you. And it's kind of interesting because I know that people have tendency to bond with almost anything, Roombas, computers. My laptop is name. I'm very, very self-aware about this topic. So yeah, there is it. But the question is why, and why we are still doing it, even though that right now we are talking about AI in very different way, mostly afraid of what it's doing with all this data and how it's not helping, how it should be, how we thought it's gonna help. Yeah, so this is the idea. It needs to lots of work because this is just from the sources talking about something else, but not noticing the differences, how they talk about it and how we actually accept it and what we did with it. So I offer more questions than answers. Usually I do in my presentations. So if you and anyone of course, you have time to answer some here, but also if later you're gonna think about it at 2 a.m., you can email me on this email. I'll probably answer or not. That's a, that depends on lots of things. So thank you for attention. I hope that it was something a little bit different than normally, and I hope that you enjoy it.
Thank you very much. And thank you. So do we have questions? We have one question here. Two questions here. So
can you stop sharing?
Also, we have a question in the chat. What was the name of your laptop?
Carlos.
Oh, great.
So this is going to be my vocabulary here is not going to be refined at all. So you asked why